Yo, what's up guys? This week we got the big Path of Exile 2 3.1 Endgame patch, and Endgame is completely different now. We don't have to crawl around the map looking for towers. We don't have to juice our towers with precursors. We just go into a map, we load in a Waystone, we load in a, these new precursors with chargers now, and we play our maps one by one. And with it, the meta has shifted quite a lot. The activities that were really good to farm before aren't so good anymore, and there is a new best has kind of stepped up. And the best ways to juice our maps and the best things to farm has shifted as well. So I've done a bit of testing over the last few days. I've got some things to show you, and hopefully this will help you get the most out of your maps, the most raw divines, the most juice drops, high quality loot. And if you find this useful, do consider subscribing for more. I'm going to get straight into it. Okay, so first let's talk about the precursor tabs, because these are the biggest thing. So before, if you had, one tower, multiple towers, 2 or 3 towers, you could have 3, 6, 9 precursors affecting a single individual map node that you can run. Now you can only have 3 precursors per map, which is a very significant change. However, they have been buffed, and they said, they've all been buffed by What they were saying with the buffs is not quite accurate, because some have been buffed much more than others. So I've pulled into here, and what I've done is I've pulled in the patch notes, and these are the main 3 things we care about. These are the main 3 things we care about at Endgame for getting the most amount of drops. If you're not aware, pretty much all of the loot at Endgame drops from either the activities, so from expedition chests, or from a ritual. When you go into the ritual and you spend your splinters, from the actual activity you get very good drops, and the rest just comes from rare monsters. So the way we've always done this is we get as many rare monsters in a map as we can. So that's step 1. You get as many rare monsters as you can, and then you buff your quantity of items. So when you beat that rare monster, he drops as many items as possible. And then you want to boost your rarity of items so that the things that do drop in high quantities are as rare as possible. Okay, so I pulled through all of the different, the different precursor definitions. I've looked them up on PW2DB, and these are the ones we care about. Brimming, which is rare monsters, collectors, which is rarity, and plundering, which is quantity. And you can see, if I zoom in, the changes between these are very different, which is not good. So for example, rarity of items, the max before it was 10%, and the max now is 30. So this is a 3x. This is now 3 times better to use. So you're getting so much more rarity by using one of these than you did before. However, something like quantity of items, which was between 3 to 7, so 7 being the cap, and now is 4 to 10, your max is 7 to 10, which is only, a 1.4x multiplier. So yeah, this is a really big deal. And what I've done is I've laid out here the effects of these 3 things: rarity of items, quantity of items, and rare monsters, and then shown the effects they have when you have multiple towers. So if you have 1, 2, and 3 towers, you can essentially put in 3 precursors, 6 or 9, affecting an individual map, because obviously they overlap, right? So with rarity, for example, if you had 3 towers, you're getting 90% rarity in the old system, before. If you put 9 tablets in, and that's 10% per tab, that's 90% rarity you're influencing one map, one node. Now, with 3 buff tabs at 30% each, you're getting 90, which means that now with rarity of items on our precursors, we're getting the same thing on every map as if we had 3 towers. So that's huge. That's a really big deal. And you can see where that's a bit of a fall off is on quantity. Quantity of items before, if the meta before was to juice quantity, it was to get as much quantity as possible. And if you had 3 towers all with quantity, you would get 63% quantity, because you could have up to 7% quantity, I think. Yeah, 7% quantity was the old one. So you could have up to 63% quantity per map on a 3 tower setup. With a 2 setup, you would get 42% quantity. Now, with the 3 buffed, precursors, you can only get 30. So you're getting somewhere between 1 tower and 2. So, you can see here that you're getting a lot more value out of your rarity of items than before. Then when we look at like rare monsters, you can see we've got 120% for, the buffed. And before that sits somewhere between having 2 and 3 towers set up. So yeah, this is like the best now. This is kind of second best. And the quantity has just completely fallen off. So if I was setting up an end game map now, what I would do is I would go to the map device. I would load in a Waystone, and I would go for rarity of items or rare monsters. So you can see here, these have like 27%, which is near 30. You got 27 and 26. I would go for things like that to have as much rarity as possible, or I would throw in, a couple of rarity and then a rare monsters. That's how I would set it up. Okay, so on the Waystones, you want to put as much juice as possible to get the numbers as high as possible and make them as rewarding as you can. They made the Waystones more risk reward based this season, so the more stuff you shove on them, the more drops you get. However, if you're struggling, if your build is a little weak or you're still working on it and you don't have very good clear on tier 15 maps, don't overjuice your map, because you're just gonna fail. You're gonna have you're gonna have 0 revives because you've put all the modifiers on. You're gonna put in these really good Waystones and you're gonna fail and it's gonna feel bad. So firstly, do what you feel comfortable doing. Then when you feel comfortable, juice them to the max. Now when you look at them, you see here you have all these different things that can come out. You have like magic monsters, rare monsters, item rarity. Now I don't think you can get quantity on Waystones. So quantity, the only way that comes is precursors, I believe, which is why we were trying so hard before to get quantity on our precursors. Now it doesn't scale so well, so I don't think it's worth doing. So we're just looking for rarity and rare monsters. We can get a good chunk of rarity on our gear already, so I believe you can get I've heard a lot of people say around 100. I have like 70, 80 on mine, and that feels great. But I've heard after 100 it starts to fall off, so you can get some on your gear. But then on your Waystones, they can go up really high as well. Look at this one, 95% rare monsters, 98% rarity. So that's the sort of maps I would be looking for. The ones with as much rare monsters and as much rarity as possible. And this is like where I say like it starts to fall off on your gear. This is a separate system. So don't feel like if you have loads of rarity on your gear, you don't need it on your Waystones, because it all just gives you more. It all just like boosts each other. So you want to get as much as you can on your gear and then as much as you can on your Waystone to have as much as possible. So you want to be really putting as many modifiers. You can see this is like 3, 4, 5. This is 6 modifier, so it's like no revives. And because we have so much difficulty, we have so many things that make the map harder. We have 95% rare monsters and 98% more item rarity, and those go even higher. So that's how you get a really rewarding map combined with really good precursors. Will set you up for some really good drops. Now, say your maps aren't so good, what do you do? Well, say you're running this map. This map's like very bad. It's a 15, but it's not got much going for it. What do you do there? Well, you can just buy them. You can just go on, trade and buy them and get some really good juiced ones, but you're going to be paying like a good chunk of Exalteds per map. But then you can also juice the maps yourself. So say these two here, they both have 4 modifiers on and they have very bad stats. They wouldn't give much drops. Magic monsters, no rarity, not great, not great maps either way. You can exalt them, obviously, to give them another modifier, and you can see 40 rarity and 63 magic monsters and pack size. None of that increases rare monsters. So they're both pretty bad. They have enfeeble, so temporal chains, really, really bad. So what we can do here is you could use, these have like 5 modifiers. You could use an Omen of Chaotic Rarity, and what this does, it will replace all the modifiers on your Waystone with modifiers that grant item rarity. So you could use this, you could throw a Chaos Orb at, say, which one's got no rarity? This one's got 19% rarity. We use that one. Now it's got 106% rarity. So very, very, very good. That's really nice. You can also throw on if we give this one have 5. Yeah, they both have 5. You can also use a Preserve Vertebrae to desecrate a Waystone. You can do it on that one and that one. And then you can go and unveil those. And then once you have Waystones that you like, you can then juice them even further by distilling them. If you've never done that, it's by using the things you get from deliriums. So if we go to our stash, you have this delirium stuff here, these liquid diluted items. These can be used on your Waystone. All you do is you right click them and then you drag them in, or you can like control click, move them in like that, or drag them and put them in like that. And then if you were to say put 3 in, and then you put your Waystone in like this, you could see here, this would give 45% increased number of rare monsters. Obviously that makes the map even harder. So do it at your own, depending on your own build, but that would then, this would then have, I'll do it just to show you. This now has 106% item rarity and 45% rare monsters, which is really, really, really nice. The other things you can distill are, let me pull this up to show you. The other things you can distill, again, on PoE2DB, they have a list of like the different delirium things if you want to look at them. And you can see this one here gives increased number of rare monsters, Liquid Paranoia. That's what I just used there in game. And then you also have this one here, Liquid Fear, which gives rare monsters an additional modifier, and more modifiers means more drops. This is really good. However, the difference you're looking at is this is like 3 to 4 Exalteds each. This is 50. So again, depending on your budget, depending on your build, you should be putting some delirium on for better drops. Okay, so we've talked about, the best precursors, the best Waystones, but what should we be running? What is the best endgame content? Now, obviously it's only been out for a little while, but I've tested as much as I can, and I want to show you something. So if we go back to this, and I pull this up, there is a hidden thing that you might not have thought of. So when it comes to setting up our maps, when we had multiple towers, when we had 2, 3 towers, right, we had 6 tab slots and we had 9 tab slots, right? So this was very, very good. Now, if here you wanted to add a unique tablet into one of these towers, that leaves you with 5 slots here in all the other spots, or in a 3 tower setup, it leaves you with 8 slots, which is great. Now, in our new setup, we only have 2 slots. Because we only have 2 slots per map, every time we want to use a unique, we only have 2 slots left. So we're now massively punished for using a unique. Like, look before, you would have had 8 slots with a 3, a 5 with a 2, and with a 1, you would have only had 2. Now we only have 2 no matter what. So every time we use a unique, the amount of juice left in our map is lowered significantly at the cost of having this unique tablet in the map. Now, why does that matter? Well, when it comes to ritual, one of the best ways to farm ritual is with using the ritual unique tablet that, helps you lower the deferral cost of your tributes. And that was like amazing. I farmed a ton of that this league, and it was really, really good. But now whenever you do that, to have those rituals be buffed, you're sacrificing a lot of the loot in the rest of your map, which, if you want to do that, cool. But in my opinion, that brings the rituals down. Expedition in a similar way, if you want to juice the actual expeditions themselves, the rest of the map won't feel as good as it could be. Now, the way I think this shines the best is Breach. I think Breach does this the best. You've also got to think as well, not only uniques, but we want to also use an irradiated tablet where we can, because an irradiated tablet will increase the level of the map by 1. All right, so if you when I set up a Breach, I would use 2 Breachstone precursors and I would use 1 irradiated, and then the map will increase in level by 1, which will massively increase our drops because everything's harder. So if you were, say, doing a ritual and you went 1 ritual tablet, 1 irradiated, and 1 unique, your map's not that good. Your map's not going to have that much, potential for drops outside of what you can find in the tribute window. Whereas if you're not using a unique, you're going to get the full benefit of the buffed tablet. So if you're using, the rarity, you're going to get 90% rarity. You're going to get 120% rare monsters because you're getting the full potential. On an irradiated tablet, you still get rarity, quantity, or rare monsters can roll on an irradiated tablet as if it was anything else. It just doesn't have the map specific thing like extra class hand or whatever it is you'll be looking for. It would just have the irradiated of monsters have increased level. So for that reason, I think that the rituals and the expeditions are a little bit worse. They're still good. You're still gonna, if you do it enough, you're still gonna make a lot of profit. You're gonna get lots of drops. They're still very rewarding and still good and valid options to do. But in terms of the best, I would say it's the Breach, because for the Breach, you can run 2 breaches that are irradiated. Your maps are sitting like this with super juice loot. You just run around the map at full speed. You clear everything as fast as you can. Everything's dropping. When you spawn the Breach, you're spawning raw mirror monsters. You're just, everything's colliding, everything's dropping, and you just farm the map as fast as possible, and you just move on. And because we're not doing towers, we can just go breach, and just clear super, super fast. The other thing that I haven't mentioned, Delirium. And the reason I've not mentioned Delirium is because when you use when you put Delirium on and you have the big mirror at the start and you go through the mirror, you are losing the Delirium buff on your Waystone. So when we talked about putting Delirium on a Waystone, you're losing that big like 30-something% of extra, rare monsters or whatever it is you put on there. These things, you lose that when you use a Delirium precursor. So I don't think Delirium's worth doing. I think Breach sits at the top. Ritual, Expedition, and Delirium in that order is probably what I would say. But that's it. I hope you found this useful. This was very, nerdy and statistical, and maybe it was overcomplicated. Let me know if this was too confusing or if there's anything you would change. But hopefully you found it useful. If you did, do consider subscribing. Let me know your thoughts. If you've been testing this, if you've been playing, what have you found to be the best? Maybe you found something better than this. This is just, my experience, and I'm not a pro in any way. I'm just trying my best to make sense of the end game. But thank you for watching. Hope you find this useful. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.